This podcast, entitled From the Middle, is a founding member of Odd Pods Media. Welcome to the golden age of podcasting. It's episode number 287, if you can believe it, of From the Middle. And if you're just joining us for the first time, From the Middle is a comedy, culture, entertainment, and sometimes interview style podcast. And your hosts are three middle-class guys living in the middle of America in the middle chapters of their lives with points of view that generally fall somewhere in the middle. I'm one of those guys. My name's Kory. I was off last week, but I spent the first part of this episode sharing with my co-hosts, Dillon and Kendall, how wonderfully they did while I was away on a work trip. And I weigh in on some of the things that they brought up, including but not limited to their wonderful breakdown of hotel restaurants and restaurants that just seem to be hanging by a thread. We get into that quite a bit. We also talk about the national championship game. The Ohio State Buckeyes won the national championship game, in case you missed it. And we were super excited about that, but they waited till I could weigh in on my experience watching from a stranger's house in Seattle. We also talk about a super embarrassing moment that I had up in front of a handful of people at this like coffee house singing thing, and it was like a total train wreck. And they break it down and tell me what I could have done differently. We also have a lot of stuff that we are streaming and some really strong recommendations of things that we think you'll enjoy. If you kind of dig our vibe and some of the things we're into, chances are you're going to like some of these shows and movies that we're streaming. So lots to discuss this week. Can't wait to share with you. Please enjoy and join us next week on From the Middle.
Oh, for the love. Sorry, just clearing my Mountain Dew hole.
I got my phone hole cleaned today.
That's where you keep it? You're so cerebral and you're so developed and evolved.
From the Middle after dark over here.
Great
Kory,
episode
welcome back,
last
buddy.
week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry to talk over you. I was so excited, though, to share how much I enjoyed listening to you guys while I was in the airport in Seattle on my way home. Really good episode. You guys have a really good chemistry without me, and it made me think multiple times. I think I'm bringing this thing down.
That is not true
Not true.
whatsoever. Absolutely. Anybody and everybody listening to this thinks exactly the opposite of what you just said.
No, and I wasn't fishing, but I did have some things I wanted to weigh in on. Your hotel restaurants, Great Wolf Lodge restaurant story
Yeah.
was perfect. And it made me think about multiple experiences I've had. One I shared on this podcast about a horrific Outback Steakhouse experience in Independence, Ohio, outside of Cleveland. And it made me want to ask you guys, do you think that there are like a ton of restaurants out there just hanging by a thread? Like the management, the shift leads, the back of house staff, like everybody's just, it's pure survival mode. They might not even know who the owner operators are, the franchisee owners are, or ever see them. And it's just a matter of time before they all show up to work and there's a chain link across the bar of the door.
That's their secret. They always have been hanging by a thread.
I just have to think that there are so many situations like that out there. Because in that situation, you were a captive audience. Unless you loaded everybody up and got back in the car, they kind of have a little bit of a mini monopoly because they're like, it's the only restaurant in the Great Wolf Lodge that makes hot food. We can argue how long it's been, sitting on a warmer, but you were kind of a captive audience. And so it's like, how good do we have to be? We got something.
Yeah, it's funny. You're right. There are a lot of restaurants out there where it seems you walk in there and it's 6:00 and there's two other families there. And you're like, this is just normal for this has to be normal for them. I don't understand what's going on here. It seems like there's far too many of those places. I have a theory that goes along with two different types of restaurants. One of which is it's like the local mom and pop owned place. And those places, my assumption is that maybe it's been multi-generational and there's this holdout idea of I don't want to sell the family company. And that might also come with some independent wealth to where, you know what, it doesn't matter if it's, if we're just barely breaking even, we're okay keeping it open. So
Because the name
that,
stands.
that's possible. Or even if it's losing money, if you have enough of that generational wealth, maybe it's okay that it's losing money for you. The other thought that I have is a lot of franchise owners and this would be like your name brand places, right? So like your Outback Steakhouses and such. A lot of franchise owners own multiple franchises. And sometimes in the contract, it depends on how much autonomy they have with what they do with the business. And so if somebody owns 3 Outback Steakhouses, it's possible that like 2 of them are keeping the whole boat afloat. And then it doesn't matter if there's one that's underperforming. True. And then you just don't want to go through the rigmarole of shutting that one down.
Yeah.
So,
well, when you were telling your story about your family walking in minutes before they opened and this Americana and this little bit of like passive aggressive sass you got from I could smell the restaurant. I know exactly like the slight tinge of pop that is like one of the worst smells ever. If you worked in the restaurant industry, is pop that has gone bad and is rotting somewhere under a thing somewhere behind the machine. Like rotting fountain drink smell is just horrible.
Yeah.
It was like a little bit of that plus the like fake leather in the booths.
Right.
Mixed with the chlorine from the water part.
Yeah. And the thin old rotting carpet that there's no money to replace it and there hasn't been for 30 years.
Yeah.
And you guys are making me hungry.
So then, okay, so here's me listening, and then you guys start talking about empty pianos and getting like a rotation of retirees to start playing, and I'm like, guys, if they can't figure out half of a roast chicken, what makes you think they're going to figure out a schedule and an itinerary of retirees to play that empty piano?
I think what my thought was in the moment, I just assumed that would be some independent contractor that the manager who's retired, that the manager of the restaurant would text about 45 minutes before they needed them and say, "You free to play tonight?" ?
Hey, Steve, crazy idea.
Dinner's on us.
No,
we're out of the roast chicken. You know, that was kind of my expectation.
Yeah. Have you guys been to Gianmarco's up here in Westerville? It's an Italian spot.
I've been to one. The same one you're talking about. Maybe that's the only one. I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty good. They'll do like a piano player on like Friday nights sometimes or Saturday nights, and we've been in there while they're playing. It's a really good time. So I agree. We need more of that, but man, I don't know if all of these places are capable, but I love the breakdown of hotel restaurants. And we got some good response from our listeners that said we need to cover hotel restaurants more often. So maybe that's a little segment we could do. Anyway, great episode. Sorry I couldn't join, but yeah, let's break down. We got to talk a little bit about the national championship. That was super fun for us Ohio State fans. I watched from a total stranger's house, which was a unique dynamic, but it was fun because they were general sports fans with no real rationale behind who to root for. Mm-hmm. And so I became their de facto reason to root for the Buckeyes, and I got to share with them all the fun little traditions that we have in our household when we watch Buckeye games, like saying OH after every score, and then they started responding and then singing Carmen, Ohio at the end of the game. And so I was really the only one in this house that really cared. And so it was fun to watch with a different group of people. I also felt a little weird multiple times because I was really, really, really getting into it and forgot that I was in a stranger's house. And so there was like this little bit of like, oh, you gotta like behave yourself. It was the brother of one of my colleagues. And so it was like, I'm kind of representing him in a way because he agreed to allow me to come over through. Anyway, so that was really fun. What did you guys think of the game?
Well, first of all, a question about your situation there. So you were in this house, stranger's house, with other people, and you're telling me that these people they did not care so much about the game.
They're general sports fans who care very much about the national championship, but they didn't have any loyalties to either team.
Okay, and they didn't hate Ohio State, like they were of the world, so to speak, and didn't hate Ohio State. Interesting.
Yeah, I was in Seattle, so they didn't really.
There's Buckeye fans everywhere, or
Right.
everybody hates us.
Right.
It didn't. That wasn't your experience.
Correct.
Huh. Seems
interesting.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
Glad to hear that you didn't have the nearsighted experience.
sometimes the narrative helps a team rally. Sometimes the narrative helps.
Sometimes we need flags and shirts that say Ohio versus the world to just get a little moment.
No, I get it. I get it. I'm just poking a little bit of fun. I agree. Like that stuff was great in the locker room. Kind of annoying in the rest of the world where it doesn't actually matter. So
Sure. I'm surprised
outside of the locker room.
I'm surprised we didn't get Ohio against the Holy Hellraiser shirts. If you remember that old Gordon Gee chestnut from back in the day referring to Notre Dame.
What about Ohio against God?
Well,
Would that have been? I wonder if that T-shirt.
Jesus roots for Ohio State, so
that's right. Yeah.
Remember? Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but God really seems to not like the losing teams, is what
I think he doesn't like Notre Dame. I think he's sick of them.
Yeah,
it's like, guys, you need to stop.
Yeah. Talk about pride before the fall. A little too much gold on their campus, if you know what I mean. Need a little more humility. We all watched Indiana Jones. The chalice wasn't gold, okay?
We need someone to throw some tablets at that gold dome.
Yeah. How was the food at the stranger's home? Did they have good game day food?
He had two smokers going. One looked like one of those, what is it, the green egg things?
Okay.
But it was like
thing.
But it was like 3 times bigger, and he was like on a little rotating thing. He had wings going. Oh my gosh. Ooh. And then ribs on another smoker. So the food was bomb. It was a little late, and we started pre-gaming, and it was like, the food better get here, because they wanted to do tequila shots after every Ohio State score. And then we started putting up a lot of points, and it was like, maybe half shots, or maybe we stop this game because this could be problematic and the food's not ready yet. But it was a really, really good time.
Yeah,
that's funny.
The game's been dissected a million different ways, so I won't dive into that part. But we had found out, the game was on a Monday night. We had found out already that our daughter's school was canceling for the next day for extreme cold. So we let her stay up until the end of the game so we could watch it in our basement on the bigger TV with the sound system and all of that. So she was probably interested in about a third of it overall, was probably like paying attention to bits and pieces. She likes when Will Howard is on screen, or was on screen, so she enjoyed those parts. But it was fun to get a watch until the very end and to get to celebrate. I have to say, though, we had a text thread going with our family, and Kory, you sent several texts that were pre-celebratory, and I'm sure it didn't happen this way, but how I remember and will remember it happening was every time you would say something that sounded like we were counting our chickens, something bad would happen on the field for Ohio State right after. And I was sitting there like, shut up, quit it. It felt very jinxy, and I didn't care for that at all. Because like they really Notre Dame blew the first half, and then they really fought the second half to try to make it a game. And so I did not enjoy your text messages before the game was over. I think I put my phone on airplane mode several times because the thread was popping off. Not just you, to be fair, but also you. So
I had a couple group texts going. It was really fun. Obviously, one was Sherry and the kids who were here watching at home. Sherry, and I think I've shared this with you guys before, after getting this basement done and making it a Buckeye basement in the year that we won the national championship, by the way, she said it's too immersive. The picture is too big. The sound is too good. It gets her anxiety level too high. So she comes upstairs and watches on the small TV in the living room. I'm like, what did we do this for? That's what it's supposed to do. But it's too much for her blood pressure and she can't handle.
Amy's the same way, watching a game that she cares about, and if it's close, she hates that. Yeah. I'm like, this is why you do it.
This is why we do it.
This is why we do it. This is great.
You could really feel that. It was a very fun game to watch. It feels already, it's been about a week. It already feels like it's been weeks ago, but I'm not sick of any of the articles or the photos or the videos or the write-ups or the analysis. None of it is getting old. I'm here for it until
we're basking. It's okay to bask after a tough loss to Kendall's team. It's okay for us to bask a little bit.
Absolutely.
So we got to enjoy it. Excuse me. This Topo Chico's hitting me. Yeah, fun times.
Yeah.
Thanks for waiting to debrief that.
You've got a whole year to be returning champs, and that'll be a good feeling. Trust me, I know. And then it'll end.
And then it'll end.
At some point. It'll be interesting to see moving forward. I know this isn't a sports, and this is maybe kind of a deep dive sports thing. So I'll just surface it real quick. Because the Lions are going through a thing right now, and Ohio State's going to be going through a very similar thing. And there are times and organizations where I think that offensive and defensive coordinators make all the difference in the world. And there are times where it's clearly the head coach who's more or less running things. And we've got a test coming up now for Ryan Day at Ohio State, who's losing definitely one. It sounds like possibly both coordinators. And then Dan Campbell in Detroit, who is losing both to head coaching jobs elsewhere. And so that is kind of a little inside baseball thing of what's going on in my mind with the Lions and the Buckeyes is how is that going to look for this coach who everybody has lauded the coordinators and now they're going to be gone and replace them with whoever, but they're going to be gone.
Interesting times for sure. And inside baseball is fine, especially when it's inside football.
I was going to say, that's why I feel like that's a football nerd thing to talk about. I could talk more about it, but I'm not going to.
In a completely unrelated incident, something funny happened to me, and I wanted to share it with you guys because I want you to feel my pain a little bit. And I'm really not overthinking it as the person who the embarrassing thing happened to. But it is a comical story, and this podcast is sometimes about posterity and sharing funny moments. So some family had come from out of town, driven an hour and a half, 2 hours to see Lily play a basketball game last weekend. And it was one of those, like, they didn't really have plans afterwards. But they didn't want to invite themselves over to our house either. But it was like, what are you guys doing? We came all this way. And so I mentioned, hey, our church is doing this like coffee house unplugged worship night kind of thing. Think of like MTV Unplugged, really low key. It's literally in the cafe area. So it's not even in the main room/sanctuary up on the platform. 15 to 30 people show up if you guys want to pop in, type of a thing. And of course, our mom, Dillon and I's mom, was one of the people that was here. And she's like, I would love to see my baby sing. That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
But it would mean that they would have to like linger for a few more hours. And this thing didn't even start until 7 p.m. So I'm like, really, really, you don't have to stay. It's not going to be a big thing. Like, literally like 15 to 20 people came last time. Just whatever. She's like, no, if we're still around, we'll come. Cool. Well, the lady who runs this, the worship leader who runs this, she was like, hey, I'm going to lead, but the theme of the evening is hope. So if there's like a couple songs about hope that, Kory, you would like to lead, just pick the songs, tell me what key you want to sing them in, and let's do it. And I was like, cool. So there's a new song called My Help by a guy named Josh Baldwin that I'm obsessed with right now. So I picked that one first. And then when I was trying to think of a second one, before I knew any family was going to be in town, I chose His Eye is on the Sparrow, sung in Sister Act 2 by Lauryn Hill. And is it Lauryn Hill? Anyway, it doesn't matter. And I love that song. And before I knew anybody was going to be coming, I think the story goes that that's the first song Dillon and I's mom ever sang in like a public setting when she was very young in like a singing competition. And so it's got some like history and some meaning behind it. Well, when mom decided she was going to stay, she said, "Well, what are you singing?" And I told her the two songs. And of course, when I told her His Eyes on the Sparrow, she's like, "Oh," so it has me. So the keyboardist was uncomfortable with the song because that song, if you've heard the recording of it, there's really no meter to it. It's very jazzy and sort of like loose. And so it's a hard thing to accompany. And so she was like, "I'd feel a lot better if you came early." And we ran through it a few times. So I show up at 5:30 and we run through it. We ran through it 3 times. It sounded great. Okay, so now we're doing the set. First song, My Help, sounds great. So much fun. Multiple songs. There's a little teaching. And my mom texts me while I'm up there. And because it's so cash and low key, I pick up my phone and she said, "Have you sung yet?" And I said, "First song, yes. Second song later." It's thumbs up. So in between that and what's going to happen, my mom, my stepdad, my aunt, and her daughter, my cousin, walk through the door. I think there was another song or two. So now it's time for His Eyes on the Sparrow. Keyboardist starts playing. Can't find the note at all. And I start in the completely wrong place. And I'm going, "Why should I feel discouraged? And why should the shadows like every horrific American Idol audition you've ever heard." And now all this meaning behind this song, something about our mom, professional recording artist, coming in and some family. I've always said, put me in front of 2,000 people, I'm fine. But put me in front of like an intimate group, especially friends and family, and I get all kind of couldn't hear the keys. And so here's me having an out of body experience where I go, "Okay, you're butchering this. This isn't even kind of close to the right key. And it's just getting worse. Hey, man, tell the keyboardist to stop and start over." And then I go, "No, I'm going to find it." And I just keep trying. And I couldn't even look over at our mom because I'm like, I know she's immediately going to be like, "Lord Jesus, please help him."
Yeah.
What eventually happens is I go through that whole verse, still not finding the note, make it to the chorus when I hear the room trying to help me find it. The room was singing along. And so I was like, "I sing because I'm happy." And I was like, "Oh, there we go. I found it." The whole first verse, I'm just all over the map. And I'm like, this is what these people think. This is what I said. So the question is, Kendall, you're a musician and a performer. What is more, maybe it's 2 questions. What's more noticeable? What's more noticeable and what's more professional to do? So what's more noticeable to the room and what's more professional to do? Basically, the options are, as I see it, you stop and go, "Sorry, guys," or you just keep pushing through. So I asked my mom and she gave a reply, but I'll let you guys respond to that in general and then with what you think should have happened for next time. That's happened to me. That's happened to me, by the way. That's the 3rd time that's ever happened to me ever. in show choir, worship leading, whatever. So embarrassing.
What's interesting is my perspective on that is, like I'm leading music from a guitar, which means that like even if monitors are weird or whatever, I still hear my own guitar. And so it's easier for me to hit the right key. So that's the first answer, is just get it right the first time, Kory. But you don't have to worry about options A or B then.
Just always crush it, bro.
Just send it, man. I don't know what to tell you. I think that there is absolutely zero shame in stopping and start. People who are in the crowd understand that, and they're not going to care so much if you stop and start. From a worship leader perspective, when you're worried about things like am I killing the vibe or whatever, it's like no, you didn't kill the vibe any more or less if you stop and restart. However, I tend to want to try to push through it, but sometimes you just can't. So for me, a very good example is I from time to time will start playing a song in the wrong key, which is, it wouldn't be a problem if it were just me on a guitar and me singing, but I have other musicians who aren't ready for a key change on measure one, right?
Is that usually like a capo situation? Like you forgot to capo?
Sometimes it's a capo situation, but also for those of you who know, I transpose in my head when I'm on a capo because it's easier for me to be able to communicate with other musicians should I have to, if I can tell them, like, if I'm playing in G and I'm capoing 2 on a guitar. So the song, everyone else is playing A, but I'm playing G. I want my music in front of me to be in the key of A. So if I have to communicate to them, I can do that quickly.
Right.
And reference, I'm looking at what they're looking at.
Right.
And so there have been times where I haven't capoed at all. And I start playing in the key that's in front of me. Or that I'll capo and then start playing the key that's in front of me, forgetting that I have my capo on. So I've done things like that before. And that's always like that comes out as soon as any other musician comes in. I hear it and I'm like, crap. And that is definitely a stop and restart situation when that happens. Yeah. But that happens like in the first measure or two, right? I haven't even gotten through the intro yet. So it's maybe less of a big deal. Nobody is singing yet. I think it's all dynamic, because in your situation, you have a crowd that is singing the song as well. You can just back off of the microphone for a few seconds.
Why didn't I do that? I just kept belting.
Yeah. I mean, you can just back off, let the crowd sing. And then when you hear it, you can like
hindsight
slowly jump back in. But if the options are stop mid-verse and start over or try to push through it, I would say everything is in hindsight. If it's going to end up being the whole verse, I would say you were better off to restart it. But if you're confident that you're going to get it like in the next couple seconds, then just do it. That's really hard to answer because there's so many ifs and there's so many don't knows. I will go back to my original statement that there is no shame. There is no more extra whatever killing the mood if you stop and restart. So that's probably the safest bet, is to stop and restart. The person who's most worried about that is you.
For sure. Dillon.
I like that Kendall's initial advice was essentially just, have you tried not singing off key, bro? Have you just tried singing it right? Would be a great start.
Oh my God.
There is also a third option. You could just walk out of the room. Just nope. Done here. I don't belong up here.
Oh,
somebody else,
that's so
especially
funny.
with mom there. You could have just actually you walk over, hand her the mic.
I honestly thought she doesn't know any of these people. She's gonna start walking up here to try to help me.
Yeah, she could. If it had gone on, I could see her walking up and standing beside you and putting her arm around your shoulder and just singing into your ear so that you could hear it. I could see that
I
happen.
love that. I would
which
love
which is exactly equal parts humiliating and so helpful. Like, thank
And then
you.
at the end, you can go, "Thank you, Jesus," and "Thanks, Mom."
So here's what she said. Uh, even if you've passed your, if you can't hear it, the note, and you've passed where you're supposed to come in, don't come in. Just the keyboardist will look back at you and go, "Oh," and then play the intro again. So, like, don't come in until you're sure is the answer. She goes, also, when you ran through it 3 times, you should have made a mental note of, like, wow, this starts really low for me in my register, or wow, this starts really high. So you make a mental note of that. And if you come in higher than that mental note, you're off. Um, anyway, so what ended up happening was I found it by the chorus, and the worship leader goes, "Hey, folks, I'm really feeling the Lord moving in this song now." She didn't say now. She said, "Let's go ahead and sing that again." And it was her throwing me a bone and going, "You've got it now, right?" And so I did verse 1 again. And then I even made a self-effacing joke on the mic and said, "Hey, you see how much better it is when we all sing together. Thank you for helping me the first time. Let's sing that again." And so it was like great.
Perfect.
And it all worked out. It was like a little joke, acknowledge it. They don't think that I think that was good. Let's move on. Oh man, so comical. So then those 4 family members are driving home that night, and the game that they had come to watch, I'll keep it short by saying it was an unfortunate game for them to come and watch. I won't get into it. And so I texted them and said something like, "Hey, thanks for showing up. Thanks for showing up when we win. Thanks for showing up when we lose. And thanks for showing up when we don't even get a chance. That's what family does. Love you guys, whatever." And it was just like, let's just sweep this whole day under the old rug. It was comical. Thought you guys would appreciate that story, and Midlers would feel what it felt like in that moment.
Yeah.
Speaking of moments, let's take one to hear from some of our friends in Odd Pods Media.
Hey there, I'm Dave, the host of Beer in Front. Sometimes the beer in front of you is the best one yet. I'll talk about some old school beers that maybe you've forgotten about, some new beers that have the potential to be a classic. I'll also talk to various people around the beer world and get their stories all about beer. That's Beer in Front, and it's available on all of your favorite podcast apps.
Speaking of women's sports, did you guys know that Ohio has a professional women's volleyball team?
Indeed.
They've been marketing this hard on
Yeah.
radio and other platforms, but especially the radio. I'm hearing a ton about it.
And this might be new information to people in Columbus or Ohio or in the country, that there's a handful of professional women's volleyball teams. Columbus, Ohio is host to one of those. They're the Fury, the Columbus Fury, not to be confused with Columbus Furries. That's a different event at a different venue. And the Fury, we went to our first game. And had a great time. They lost. Turns out they haven't won a game yet. But I would say, and it kind of makes sense once I say it, that it was for how big the venue was and for how few people there were overall, couple thousand, I don't know, in Nationwide Arena. So feels pretty empty. It was a very engaged crowd, which sounds obvious. If you're going to take time out of your day to go watch a professional women's volleyball game, you're probably pretty into volleyball. But it was a lot of fun. And I'm not a huge volleyball person. My wife likes volleyball. My daughter has done one volleyball camp. So this might be like things, visions of things to come. But there was a DJ who killed it. There was great music in between, like every set, or not every set, all the plays. Set is a bunch of minutes. Play is just usually a short amount of time. So great DJ. Nationwide Arena was a ton of fun when it wasn't packed and you can use the bathroom easily. And I had a great time. So I didn't know if you guys had entertained going to a game or if anybody is entertaining the idea of going to a game. But if you can swing it, go. Because we had a great time and we're bopping along to the music the whole time. Great mix of music. Lots of fun.
Yeah.
If you can swing it, if you can bump it, set it, or spike it, go check it out. I have been encouraged. It warms the cockles of my heart to see how encouraging the community has been around the team. It doesn't feel forced or like yay women's sports, but it's like a genuine enthusiasm. And I hope they start doing well and it gains some traction. I think that would be awesome. If you do go down to a game, this ties into our first topic of restaurants hanging by a thread. Maybe don't go to that Buca de Beppo next to Nationwide Arena, because we took Lily there for her 18th birthday with friends, and the food was mediocre at best. And I was really disappointed because Buca used to be really, really good. The atmosphere has always been good. But we walked away. Now, granted, a Blue Jackets game was on that night, and we made our reservation for the time that the Blue Jackets game started, thinking everybody's going to clear out and they'll still have their A team at the restaurant. It was so bad. We asked for a few items to be comped because of the quality and how late they came out. And I was like, Buca used to be so good. The one in Worthington had to close down.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah. Columbus Fury, that's what this is about. Kendall, weigh in.
Go check it out. Also, fun fact, Joe Burrow and his dad are part of the ownership group. So if you like Joe Burrow, Cincinnati Bengals quarterback, if that means anything to you, there you go.
Of the Fury, not the Beppo. Keep going.
Right, not the Beppo. Yeah, I don't think they care about Beppo.
That makes that's changes the look of what you just said. I would encourage certainly volleyball, but if you're listening to this and you're in a city of any kind, even if you don't have like a major NBA team or NFL team or whatever, or even if you do, there are probably other sports, like more minor sports that you might not even know about. And those games are always fun to go to. So whether that's like visiting like your local raceway, like that's always a blast to do that kind of thing. But I remember when I was younger, Columbus had this was before the WNBA. Columbus had a professional women's basketball team called the Columbus Quest, and I went to a couple of those games, very lightly attended, but they were so much fun. And I mean, you have a team to root for. You just root for your home team, and you don't know any of the players, but who cares? It's fun. It's usually inexpensive. You get to see a live sporting event up a lot closer than you otherwise would. They still have ways of paying and subsidizing and things like that to make sure that there's like good entertainment, such as a bopping DJ, or like a halftime show of like a trick dog that does things or whatever. Like you get all of the cool stuff. So especially if you have kids, a lot of times your kids, they don't know or care about the Blue Jackets or whatever. They care about the other stuff. And the other stuff is all there, and it's a lot cheaper, and it's still fun. If you're just a sports fan, support your local sports teams, no matter what sport, no matter who they are. It is a blast.
Yeah.
Plus one to that, and that's been my experience taking our kids to stuff where it's like, they don't know the difference of the traction a team has or the national recognition that a team has. They're like, oh, I'm in a chair eating a hot dog sitting high up where there's music and stuff happening in front of me. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depending on their age.
Yeah.
And you can spend good money on stuff that your kids are like, don't give two rips about, or spend a little money on something that's as fun for them, to your point.
Yeah. Yeah. Our daughter was thrilled we made it onto the jumbo screen, as they're panning around to different fans. And I realized her first pro sporting event, I don't think I've ever been at a sporting event where I've been on screen. So that was a first for me, and was
Having a cute kid with you ups your chances.
totally ups the chances.
And
I'm sure they weren't like, look at that Chris Farley-esque creature over there. We should throw him on the monitor. I'm sure they saw my daughter and went, she's adorable. Let's put her on the screen. So that was a ton of fun. And we've said similarly nice things about the Clippers Stadium, the Columbus Clippers, the baseball team. Also a very nice experience.
So cool to go to. Park. Yeah.
Yep.
Now they're getting a little, I mean, they're not expensive compared to other things, but like I've looked into season tickets because that's how much I enjoy going to Clippers games. And they're out of my price range, but
yeah,
a couple games a year for sure. I'll do that.
There's always a Star Wars night at the baseball stadiums,
Indeed. Star Wars night is so fun.
Speaking of Star Wars, has anybody been watching Skeleton Crew? Because I've heard nothing but great things, and I need to start with the kids. Okay, Dillon, give us the skinny.
Hand raised. This feels like a great spot to start talking about things we've been watching, because I know I've got a few things. So Skeleton Crew did wrap up. I think ended up being 8 episodes. Tons of fun. I think I sort of discussed it early on in a couple episodes back, early on in what would have been its first and maybe only season, was pretty accurate. Like the Goonies, or like Goonies in the Star Wars universe type. What's the Stranger Things type feel? Yeah. Piratey adventure in space. Tiny little pocket of the Star Wars universe. There's no big implications. It's not. It's just okay that it's its own little romp pocket adventure, in a little corner of space that's interesting, and you get to see some new stuff that you haven't seen before, but nothing crazy. It's not meant to be universe defining within Star Wars canon. So lots of fun. Kids could definitely watch it. Little scary, maybe not littlest kids, but certainly middle to older kids. And it's just fun. Even if you don't really know Star Wars, it doesn't really matter. It's like if you got a good pirate adventure kind of, let's go find the treasure kind of story, you can just kind of jump in and it's okay. Jude Law was great. The kids in it were really great. Interesting characters. It takes on a little bit of there's a tiny little part of the story that's about one of the kids has some challenges, and it's not defining for the character. They handle things really, really well with that particular character, and it's just fun. And then it's always fun when you see cool robots and aliens and creatures and stuff. So really nicely done series. Definitely one you could watch. I don't know that I could pick an appropriate age for, but if I had to, like 8-ish, 9 and up, probably, as long as, they've seen a movie with pirates or something in it before, or something like that. It's great. So definitely check out Skeleton Crew. Kory, what have you been hearing, though, from people you've watched? Something similar?
Well, we've always said on this podcast that nobody hates Star Wars like Star Wars fans. And so I'm just comforted that I haven't heard people trashing it and saying, like, it's really fun, so surprised, really good. And this is from some pretty, not critical, and I always find the negative, but they often have opinions of whatever the latest and greatest Star Wars content is. And it kind of, their attitude has been like, it's more than I expected. It's got Star Wars on it. I'm entertained. I can share it with my kids. It's so fun. Yeah. Everything you just.
I think if you go in, I've not heard anyone have anything bad to say about it. If you go in thinking, at worst, I'll come out and go, it was good, and I'm glad I watched it. It was fun. I think that's a really healthy way to approach it. I don't think anyone's going to walk out of it thinking it's incredible Star Wars storytelling, because that's not really its point. Like, it's not. You're not waiting for Luke Skywalker to show up or something like that and save the day against a villain of the whole, galaxy. That's not what it is. So I think as long as you go in with those expectations, you'll enjoy it. Nice little story.
Yeah, I've heard that it does not have big implications.
It does not have big implications. No, that's true. Yep, small implications. Maybe some medium implications, but no big ones.
In the Star Wars realm of things, just rewatched Rise of Skywalker with my oldest. There was a night it was just he and I at home, and again, I there's haters, but I don't understand the hate. I like the film. I like the story. I like the last three, and so does he. So
yeah, it turns out when your entire identity isn't built on a movie franchise, it's way easier to just go and enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah.
And I say that as someone, I would consider myself a medium to big Star Wars fan. I watch all the shows that come out that I can watch. So if you just accept it for what we've talked about many times, like I just want to be entertained. Does it all make perfect sense? But is it entertaining? Absolutely. You're going to have fun with some battles and some cool characters and stuff like that. So I'm glad you went back and watched it. Did you watch all three in that trilogy, or you just happened to watch The Rise of Skywalker?
We just happened to watch that one. We were scrolling through. He said he wanted to watch a movie. I started looking at movies. He saw Rise of Skywalker, said, let's do that. I'm like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have some other things I've watched. Should I go through some of the other things?
Do it.
Fire them off.
Cool. So go watch Skeleton Crew. I did watch Faire on HBO or Max or HBO Max or whatever you want to call it. That's essentially Tiger King if it were a Renaissance fair. So maybe not quite as dramatic, but like basically Tiger King in a Renaissance festival. So you can check that out. It really kind of focuses on who they say is like the kind of founder of the large rural Renaissance fairs, this guy in Texas, and weird and wild. So if you're into that kind of thing, it's definitely not for kids because it's on, as most things on HBO aren't. But guy's a kooky character and who started this Renaissance festival, and it's interesting. So it's a 3-part mini series on there. So very, very good. Check that one out if Tiger King at a Renaissance festival sounds interesting to you.
I mean, can you give us a little more, like, what makes it so Tiger King-y? Like, is he just crazy? Is there a seedy underbelly? Like,
yeah, eccentric would be polite. Saying he's eccentric would be polite. Very dramatic, elderly is relevant. Not being ageist. He's an elderly owner who is probably considering selling or retiring because he's been doing it a long time. There's a little bit of who's going to be the next in line. To a degree, I think everyone accepts that it's reality and they're not actually taking over a throne. But sometimes you kind of wonder with some of the characters if they really understand that it's not an actual kingdom. In his retirement,
is that him there?
That's him there. If you're on YouTube,
So I can see why his future's unclear. He can't really see ahead of him.
Got some visual challenges, and he's also looking for love at a very old age, and is completely willing to use medicine to help him find it. If you know what I mean. So he's an eccentric character. It's a battle for who gets to take over. One of the main contenders is the quote Lord of Corn, who's very interested, and it just very, very quirky.
Wow,
to say the least. So the trailer's great. Even if you don't go watch it, just go watch the trailer for it, and you'll probably get a pretty good sense of it being pretty.
I have to watch this now.
Yeah, it's really not even. It's just bizarre. It's bizarre and weird, and I just was one of those things. You're like, I don't know what I just watched, but I think I'm glad I watched it. So check that one out if you wanna be, you know how Tiger King just had the bizarre. You just watch it and be like, that was just bizarre. It's just very eccentric. So that one's really good if you want to check that one out. Another miniseries on HBO, not comedy, definitely more serious, God Save Texas on HBO. And I love if we could get some Texas reaction. If anyone has, this is apparently a book that was made into a miniseries. And I'll come out right out of the gate and say it's not all criticism of Texas, as the name would imply. It starts out right away acknowledging that there's certainly lots of positives about Texas because so many people go visit there, and it's sites and for sports and whatever. But a state as large as Texas also has some of its own issues. A couple of those are the focus of the three main episodes. One of which is the state prison system and focuses on a city called Huntsville that has a lot of prisons in the area. The second is the oil boom, and not everyone benefited, and some actually were affected negatively by the oil. Not only were they not enriched by the oil boom, but there's health consequences of living near all this oil refineries and things. And it centers around a community that happens to have African American inhabitants and the African American experience in Texas, especially amidst the oil boom. And so that's the second episode. And the third one focuses on El Paso and the border wall. And so kind of an interesting look on anyone that, and the gist of some of that episode is like, the border wall isn't just a wall. If you live down here, you understand that the border is communities built up alongside both walls where there's families and there's coworkers across the border, and it doesn't always feel as simple as just there's a wall and you stay on that side and we stay on this side. It's very complicated. And so really, really interesting. If you're interested in any of those topics, there is a book. And then the 3 episodes are made by 3 different filmmakers who sort of chat with the author of the book while they're diving in, and they're natives to Texas. So this isn't outside criticism. That's just people from those areas that are documentary filmmakers that are acknowledging the things they love about where they're from, but also the complexity. And so the kind of thought that came to me as I was watching it was something like America the Beautiful is also complex and messy. And so sometimes we have to own that and learn from it is sort of
thoughtful plug, bro.
Well, I saw, as much as I can watch Star Wars Skeleton Crew and Ren Fair and Marvel movies, I do try to work in serious history docs and stuff like this. So really, really good. If you want totally different stuff, I've also been watching Harry Potter Wizards of Baking on HBO Max. You can see my interests run the gamut.
I think you told us about that one.
Yeah, my wife and daughter watch a lot of the baking shows, and I just miss them. I'm doing other things. But this is one that I thought I would be more interested in it because it's Harry Potter themed. I knew they had some guests show up on the first season, and they like baking shows. So we all got to watch that one together. And then I started watching St. Dennis Medical, which is a new comedy, kind of like The Office, but set in a hospital system on the West Coast. So that one's on Peacock. Very funny so far. Really good cast on. I'm not saying it's as good as The Office, but a lot of comedies that get plugged and marketed as being hilarious or whatever, and you watch it and kind of go, yeah, it's fine. This is one of the funnier comedies I've seen on TV in a while. So St. Dennis Medical.
That's awesome. Kendall, you watching anything good, my man?
So I did watch on Amazon Prime a documentary called ChiefsAhloic, a wolf in Chiefs clothing, which I don't know if you guys remember a few years back, there was a story that went around. I don't think it was crazy headlines, but of a Chiefs mascot who apparently had gotten arrested for bank robbery. Does that ring a bell at all?
No.
Okay. Not really a mascot so much. So I remember the headline, but didn't know anything else about the story. And this documentary is about this guy who is a Chiefs super fan. And he's like, every team sort of has like their 1 or 2 super fans who are recognizable by the community, right? So Ohio State has the guy that wears the cowboy hat and
Buckeye guy, big nut.
Yeah. And so this ChiefsAhloic guy who dresses up in a wolf costume.
Kansas City against the world.
Yeah. Everybody has that slogan, and I always think it's hilarious. Anyway, but he this guy, nobody knows exactly who this guy is. He's always wearing this costume at the games. And importantly, he's also going to all of the road games for the Kansas City Chiefs. And so people are assuming this guy is wealthy. And I mean, he kind of is. But what he made a habit out of doing was he would travel to the road games. Somewhere en route to the road game, he would rob a bank via armed robbery. And he did this habitually. And it took them some time before they start like the investigations for all these bank robberies that were all unsolved. And then all of a sudden things start connecting. They're like, Chiefs games. I think these are connected.
So he wasn't dressing like a wolf to rob the bank.
I think in one of them, he actually was dressed as he had the wolf mask on when he robbed the bank.
Because you'd think that would be a memorable data point to connect bank robberies. Was your guy dressed like a wolf?
Well, I think in one of them he was dressed as the wolf, or at least had the wolf mask, and all the rest of them he was not. Just basic ski mask kind of stuff.
Okay, got it.
But so they end up figuring out who this guy is, and they arrest him. What's interesting about the documentary is they start in on this documentary once they find out that it's this ChiefsAhloic guy. That's his name. And so in the documentary, he's like being interviewed, and there's a Chiefs fan of a bail bondsman who bails him out. And like puts him up in a hotel room. He's watching the Super Bowl from a hotel, and the camera crew is there watching him watch the game. And he's talking about all of the stuff, giving you the sob story, right? Of how he was like his family is financially dependent on him, not like his wife and kids, but like his mom and brother or whoever. And all of this stuff. And this guy had stolen just shy of $1 million total, but then also had like a horrible gambling habit. It would drop like hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes on Chiefs games, and was constantly going broke, and therefore had to rob these banks and all of this stuff. And so he's in the documentary. And then at one point he jumps his bail. And so now the documentary shifts to now the main character is the bondsman trying to find him. And tracking down his family and everything like that. The bondsman ends up, it's like an $80,000 bond that like the time frame had passed for him to catch him. So now he owes the state $80,000. The bondsman does. And so that's the story. The guy is currently in a federal prison, and because police eventually caught up to him and snagged him, and then the bondsman gets his money back in that situation if he is caught, which he was. And it's a fascinating little story.
Wow.
That I heard a little bit about years ago when it happened, but I didn't know he jumped his bond. I didn't know that he was bonded out. I just knew that there was a guy arrested, and it was this crazy Chiefs fan who was robbing banks. I knew that much. But
that's crazy.
We have a shared note that you just jotted down, that thing. I had no idea that was where any of this was going. That's why. I thought this is going to be some like behind the scenes, like get a look at the Chiefs and their hunt
kind
for
of like a 30 by 30 kind of thing.
Yeah. Holy cow.
That kind of has vibes of like the Pez smuggler collector guy that we talked about on this. That's crazy. I'm going to check that out. Just a few quick ones from me, but one I'm going to linger on. So got back into The Chosen. Just really impressed with what they've done with that show. It's so much better than some of the really bad Christian produced stuff. So really enjoying that. Wild Robot is a fun time by DreamWorks if you want a good family movie. Themes of nature and technology that are really fun. Finally watched Avatar: The Way of Water with Lily because she's all about that right now. Severance season 2 just started, and I'm a big Aquafina fan and wanted to watch her and Sandra Oh in Quiz Lady. So I watched that on a plane, and I was entertained. It's not great. Aquafina is not the best actress, but it's fun. There's one scene where the premise of the show is that her entire life has dreamed on getting on this game show that's a lot like Jeopardy, but it's hosted by Will Ferrell. And she finally gets on because she's so bright, and she like has all the nerves that she's finally going to be on this show that she's watched since she was a little girl. So kind of a fun premise. But the one I want to linger on, I recommended it to some family. They loved it. They binged it. They loved it. It's called A Man on the Inside. It's streaming now on Netflix. It features Ted Danson, who sadly lost his wife and is kind of like lonely and bored. What he does in his spare time is thoughtfully clip stories from the newspaper and send them to his daughter that he thinks she'll be interested in. And she's like, "Dad, you need to find something to do." So he sees an ad in the paper for a local detective agency and says that they basically just need a guy of a certain age who's capable of using his cell phone. And they're going to have him as a plant, a man on the inside, to investigate some jewelry that's come up missing at a local old folks home. And so he finds a new purpose, and he's so excited to be like a spy. And he goes on the inside of this nursing home, nursing community, retirement community, and befriends the people. And it's a comedy, and it's so sweet, and it's really fun. Ted Danson kills it. It's perfectly cast. And Stephanie Beatrice from
Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine is in it as well. She's the one that runs the retirement community. Lila Rich Creek is the detective that hires Ted Danson. It's so fun. It's so sweet. It's so wholesome. It gets a little sad at times. It kind of feels like the Afterlife thing that we talked about with man, I'm losing the names. Richie Gervais, Afterlife. Like, it's serious, a little dry, but man, really, really good time. Season 2 is coming out right now. It's really hard for Sherry and I to find shows that we can agree on. This was one that we were so excited to find and binge together. Man on the Inside, can't say enough. Really good time. So that's what I got.
That's awesome.
Love a good Ted Danson.
Yeah, I saw the. I have to watch the trailer, but it sounds like I need to just watch the show anyways. So I'm glad that you talked about that one. Is that it? Are we gonna wrap this one for the week?
It's a great spot to wrap. You have a hard stop, and there's still a ton that we can cover in our shared notes for next time. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We appreciate your listenership and your viewership. We've gotten a handful of reach outs from all of you lately, encouraging us and weighing in on the topics that we discuss. That's always our favorite part. So please do that here as well.
We've got to follow up with some of those too, because we've had some comments on some topics that I want to discuss.
Topics on topics, people with questions. So we want to include those as well. So thank you for doing that. That's always our favorite part. And be sure to check out our sponsor's website, artiusman.com. They make really good men's grooming products, especially for those with facial hair. So go check that out at artiusman.com. That's artiusman.com. And when you do, fill your cart with a bunch of good stuff. One of my favorite products that they make tangential to their men's grooming stuff is their soy blend woodwick candles that crackle a little bit when it's still cold outside. So get yourself a nice candle and use promo code The Middle when you fill your cart. That's The Middle, all one word, to get 25% off of your first order. All subsequent orders will help us out and help them out. So we appreciate that. We appreciate their sponsorship, and we love hanging out with each of you. So thanks for tuning in for yet another week. Behind the scenes, it's looking real close to making this Hot Ones challenge happen. So it's going to happen. We're going to film it. We're going to stream it live. It's going to be great. Somebody might die. So tune in for that. But yeah, thanks for hanging in. We love you guys, and we will see you next Wednesday on From the Middle.